Welcome to a very special edition of Sell Me This podcast. We are at the Tech Connect Alberta International Women's Day event, where we're going to be speaking to a number of inspiring and amazing women about their stories in business, life, and the community that's been built here in Alberta. I hope you enjoy. So we're super excited to kick off our first interview for our marathon of interviews on the International Women's Day Tech Connect event today. I am incredibly honored to have with me Minister Tanya Fir. Thank you for joining us. We're going to dive right into things. I know we're doing rapid fire back-to-backs here. So why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are, the work you're doing, and kind of what you represent from a government standpoint.
So I have the honor of being the Minister of Arts, Culture and Status of Women for the province of Alberta. And I love the Status of Women portion of it and being able to do amazing activities like this one with Tech Connect today and just see all the inspiring entrepreneurs and businesses that are mainly being driven by women.
That's fantastic. I imagine you get into some really interesting conversations. When we think about the evolution of women specifically in government and kind of what's happening from the ecosystem that you're working in, what's some of the advancements that you've seen in the last couple of years here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think of some of the resources and tools that we're doing as a government to make sure that we're removing barriers and letting women advance, whether it's online resources that we have, our Business Link or our Women's Hub, which provides sources for where financial supports may be available or resources. That's amazing. And we also, I'm proud of things like our Women in STEM scholarship and Women in Technical and Applied Arts scholarship that aim to help women in some of the fields they're underrepresented in. And things like childcare, making sure childcare is affordable and accessible is important.
Amazing. Yeah, the childcare is definitely a game changer.
Yes, yeah.
If you think about looking forward in the year ahead, what advice do you have for women in general as they're pursuing their ambitions, their dreams, and the things in front of them?
Yeah. You know what? Whether you're just starting out in your career or you're midway through your career, it's important. Sometimes women may feel worried if they need to take a break or take a breath. And, whether it's older women that are oftentimes looking after younger kids and elderly parents or younger girls that are just getting started, don't be afraid to fail. And don't be afraid if you don't know exactly what you want to do. There's time, explore things, try things. You don't have to have it all figured out.
Fantastic. I know this was a rapid fire 3 questions, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat here, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Incredibly excited for our next interview to have Jackie Paisley with us today. Jackie, we're going to dive right into things and have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Jackie Paisley. I'm Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition at Slalom. Slalom is a full-service consulting company, I should say, in technology, and I recruit everything from technical staff, business advisory, right up to industry leaders globally across Slalom.
And how did you get into that?
Well, I've been in recruitment now going on 13 years across all different facets of HR, and joined Slalom 4 years ago on a whim. I had done some technology recruitment before, and they approached me, and it sounded like a really great opportunity to start up the Western Canadian side of things with the leaders. And so far, we've been able to grow to 70 people in Calgary and over 150 in Vancouver.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That must be a pretty fun journey you're on there.
It is, and we hire really specific people for the type of culture they bring as far as wanting to be a part of what Slalom's building. So it's great to be working with such like-minded people.
So I'm also in the tech industry, and so you probably have a really interesting lens into some of the changes that are happening in the tech industry. Mm-hmm. And so, what progress have you seen specifically when it comes to women in the industry over the last few years?
We're really fortunate at Slalom where half of our leadership team pretty much is females across the globe. And it's really quite easy then to recruit other females. People want to go where they feel like they're being seen, and being able to see themselves in the leaders of a business does half the work for you. Really making sure that there's equal opportunity as far as equal pay, equal job growth opportunities as well, and having a real different landscape of what we do as far as not just being the technical side of things really opens up the doors to people who are trying to cross-skill into technical roles. So they might come in on the people advisory side and then upskill on the technical side.
Amazing. And is that something that you've seen kind of progress more quickly over the last couple of years?
Absolutely. I think just in general, tech in Alberta has progressed so much from the oil and gas industry, and it's great to see the diversity there. But I feel that women have felt more at peace with going into that industry versus oil and gas, just simply because there is more opportunities for flexibility. Typically, we see in oil and gas a lot of travel involved that can upset family life, where tech can be remote, it can be more flexible, and it really is an analytical side of work, which I feel that women are especially good at.
I love it. And so if you think about the year ahead and in 2026 with all it has to bring for us, what advice do you have for people that are pursuing their dreams, their passions, whether it's tech, whether it's not tech, whether it's at slalom or somewhere else? Are there any specific things that you would advise someone to do as they're embarking on kind of following their passions and dreams?
Yeah, it's really important to find your community. I talk about this a lot in any kind of advice I give, whether it's to grads, whether it's to newcomers to Canada. Finding work or pursuing new opportunities is not necessarily about just the skills you have. It's about the advocacy around it. So be really intentional of who you connect with, and don't always seek for someone to give you something. Really try to form a really natural and organic connection, and you will find that those opportunities just start to naturally fall into place. It is hard work. You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the right kind of community. But when you do, it's really very magical and very fruitful.
And if you think about that same advice to women specifically, is there any different advice, or does it kind of follow that same path that you're talking about there?
I think it's like very similar. I find that women specifically are more willing to help other women. So in a way, it's kind of easier, but in a way, again, having that mutual connection versus seeking out somebody that you're wanting to potentially work for and say, how can I get a job with you? That puts a lot of pressure on the other person. So forming those really natural connections and saying, hey, I found this really interesting, I would love to talk to you more about it. It kind of embraces learning from them versus asking them for something. And so I find that it's a lot easier to form those deeper relationships.
Amazing. Well, as I promised, this was kind of rapid fire. Thank you so much for joining us for a few minutes
welcome.
today. Very excited for your panel later, and nice to meet you as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
In our back-to-back podcast today, I'm incredibly excited to follow up a conversation with Angela Nguyen. Angela, we are going to dive right into things today. Why don't you introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
For sure. So my name, like you said, is Angela Nguyen, and I'm building a portfolio career as a leadership coach, consultant, and podcast host of The Leader Within, where I'm focused on empowering leaders to lead through the gray. Yeah. In my day job, I'm actually a people and culture consultant with ATB Financial.
I love it. And so the term portfolio career is coming up a lot. I love the idea of the portfolio career. Quick 30 seconds for someone that isn't familiar. What exactly is a portfolio career?
Yeah, it's being able to build your skills through different vehicles and avenues instead of just having a linear career, whether it's through entrepreneurship or a corporate career.
I love it. And so that freedom and that flexibility that comes with having something like a portfolio career, I think can be incredibly empowering. If you think about the opportunities that creates in the ecosystem specifically for women, have you seen how that has kind of shaped the ecosystem, or kind of what that means for women in the industry right now?
Oh, for sure. It doesn't require you to wait for permission to actually gain the skills and experiences that employers are asking for. And that's partially why I did it in the first place. Because sometimes you'll go to employers and they'll be like, you don't have enough experience. Or you go through the business route and they're like, you don't have enough clients. So when you build all at once, it actually gives you a little bit of leverage to work off of.
So it just gives you that chance to just go and do it rather than waiting for everyone else to kind of give you the checkbox.
You got it, yes.
Amazing. I can feel that being incredibly empowering. Mm-hmm. If you think then about how that shapes the opportunities for people in 2026 as they kind of look at their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations in front of them, what advice would you give to someone that is either kind of starting that journey, specifically a woman that is looking to build that ecosystem for themselves?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it succinct, but I'll say it's three things. One is getting really clear on who you want to be and the problems you want to solve for, because that gives you the confidence to then go say to someone, this is the value that I will bring to the table. Second is your presence and your brand and investment in you is a form of currency. So as you develop the social proof and actually proof of your skills, that actually creates buy-in when you have conversations. And then the third is your network and your relationships is another form of currency as well. I've been fortunate enough to be able to rally women, men, allies around me that not only celebrate with me, but in my moments, they lift me up, or they look me straight in the face and give me advice and say, Angela, you should probably do something different there. And so I think if women were to consider any of that, start understanding, one is, again, like, what value can you bring to the table and who do you want to be? Second is your relationships is a form of currency. And then lastly, build your brand and invest into you.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today. As I promised, rapid fire, back to back to back. Are there any kind of final words of wisdom that you would want to impart here?
Yeah, I would say you are the best investment that you'll ever make. So make sure you invest in you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all this with me today. And our listeners, it's been an absolute privilege. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
You too, Keith. Thank you.
Next up, we have Aakriti. Aakriti, we're going to jump right into things. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks for the warm welcome, Keith. I'm Aakriti. I'm a talent acquisition specialist, and I'm also an ICF certified career coach. I'm based out of Calgary. So I come with nearly 20 years of experience in recruiting and talent acquisition. And I've had the privilege to work with some top tech firms such as Amazon, Sapient, Wipro, and Fidelity back home. It's been like 3 years now that I'm in Canada, and I've since then continued my journey into full-time recruiting roles, corporate hiring. But I think what drives me is the nobility that comes with the job. I am able to offer jobs every single day, so that gives me a lot of meaning and purpose to my life. Besides, obviously, it's been, I think I would say I fell into this line, just happened to fall into this profession, but I've stuck to it very, very intentionally. Yeah.
And so I think you're completely correct in terms of the responsibility and the privilege that comes with recruiting.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned falling into it. Is there something that drew you towards the hiring side of things, or was it just kind of a series of events that brought you to where you are?
Absolutely. It was a series of events. Actually, I have done my Bachelor's of Engineering and I'm an MBA. After that, I did my Master's in HR. But since being an engineer, I got placed as a technology tester as well. But when I graduated, it was 2008 and it was like economic crisis. So I had an offer letter which was never honored. Oh. And I was not expecting for it to be honored as well, because job offers were getting cancelled left, right, and center. So I ended up home, and I just happened to join a small recruitment firm nearby, very close to my house. So and I think I just started doing and started learning on the job. LinkedIn was a new thing back then, and I've since been a big LinkedIn fan and a creator as well. So yeah, I just fell into it. Like I said, it was just destiny, and I chose to stick to it because I fell in love with it totally.
That's amazing. And so you're one of the LinkedIn originals.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. In fact, like the one who was running that small recruitment firm, he was like an IITian, very, very academically bright CEO, and he taught us LinkedIn.
Okay.
When it was a very new thing back then.
And so you probably have a really interesting lens with the work that you're doing, specifically when it comes to some of the trends, patterns that are happening with women in the tech industry.
Yeah.
And so if we think about the ecosystem right now, what patterns are you observing? Are we headed in the right direction? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think especially, I mean, I don't think it's any longer a very linear path that everybody is supposed to follow. Like, I know there is a conventional path where you'd like to just progress into people management roles and just grow up the ladder. I've seen that, like in my current organization, I have seen like women starting as a nurse at floor and then growing to be people managers, program managers, director of cares, and now even leading the entire site as an executive director. But I've also seen people in corporate role transitioning cross-functionally, like a payroll manager now being an HRIS manager and doing technical implementations, which is like a vast contrast. So I think it's the hybrid of skills and the broad skills that you bring along, and I think how visible you are in the organization, that also really helps you to break boundaries, I'd say.
I think that's really good advice. On the trend of advice, if you're thinking about someone that's building their career right now, specifically a women as they're looking forward to 2026, you've obviously carved a really interesting and incredible career path for yourself, but if you were to impart some of that wisdom that's helped you get to where you are, what would some of those words of advice be?
I'd say start showing up. Invest in building your own personal brand, because job market today, as it's very imminent, job might be there today, it may not exist tomorrow. But I think it's very important to invest in your own story, build a personal brand, show up on LinkedIn, be your own self, like show up as your authentic self, because that's originally you.
I love it. As promised, I short and sweet here. I know that we had the few questions. I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you very much,
and,
Keith.
and taking some time to answer a few of these questions. I think our listeners will really enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event as well.
For sure. Thanks for having me. Pleasure's all mine.
Awesome. Next up in our string of interviews, we have Bontu. Bontu, I would love to just jump right into things and have you introduce yourself, a little bit about the work that you do, and what gets you excited every day.
For sure. Thanks for having me. And so my name is Bontu Galataa, and I am an entrepreneur strategist with ATB Financial. And I'll explain what that means because it's not very clear. I like to kind of put it into two parts. So first part is working with organizations that support entrepreneurs. And the other piece is I do a lot of our educational content for ATB. So we host a lot of webinars and workshops and various facilitation and moderating and speaking opportunities come up with that as well. So that's kind of what I do. I'm also...
Oh, this is the big reveal.
Yeah. Also an entrepreneur. So I have a consulting, Sayo Consulting is the firm that I have, and it mostly focuses on grant writing and business consulting as well. But usually, I think my focus, given my 9 to 5, is limited to grant writing right now.
I feel like I'm going to need to grab a business card after this. I feel like grants are something that everyone struggles with.
Yes.
How does one become an entrepreneur strategist? I feel like it's, as you mentioned, it's a big title, but and it sounds like you probably get to have your hands in a whole bunch of different interesting things. But how do you arrive there?
For sure. Interestingly, I actually pitched for the role, and I think ATB might be unique because it was already there. I mean, it wasn't like I created the role, but it was already there. But I wanted to be on the team. As soon as I finished my MBA in entrepreneurship and innovation, I wanted to be on the entrepreneurial growth team within ATB. And it really is the role itself. There's 3 of us across Alberta, and all of us have entrepreneurial experience. Some have banking experience as well, but truly though, it's that entrepreneurial experience that you bring in and provide support to the other entrepreneurs that we support as clients.
And is there a specific stage of entrepreneur or business leadership that you primarily work with?
So my team specifically is lending up to 250. That's kind of how we differentiate. So that's the entrepreneurial growth team's support. But of course, we've got our business and commercial if they're larger than that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so you probably have an interesting glimpse into the entrepreneur ecosystem in general.
Yeah.
When you think about the representation of women and the opportunities for women in entrepreneurship specifically, are there specific trends that you're seeing? Is there progress that's being made? Like, what's your perspective on the trajectory there?
Yeah, for sure. I think something interesting to note, I kind of have to remind myself every now and then, is that even banking per se, right? Like, it's 1963 was in Canada specifically that women were able, white women, let me just be accurate, were able to have bank accounts under their name without their husbands or husband or I guess parents, maybe dad's permission, right? So that's only people are alive. 1963 is not a long time ago, right? My mom was born in 1963. So when we look at that kind of data, we've come a long way. I think VC funding, if I'm not mistaken, it's women still, I think, make up 2%.
It's a dramatic difference.
Right? Yeah. And then within that, if you look at women of color, it's probably 0 point something. So yes, progress is being made, but there's a lot more room for growth. And that gives me a bit of hope because I think we are changing, and we're, especially in the tech ecosystem, I think there's an opportunity to lean into the uniqueness and the various just diverse thinking that is needed to innovate. Like that's what you need in order to build within the tech ecosystem. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping will happen.
I love it. And so speaking of things that are in progress and that are happening, if you're giving advice to someone that's looking to become an entrepreneur, they're looking to start that journey, specifically a woman that is on the edge of that journey, what advice do you have to give them?
Yeah. To be quite honest, right now, it's tough. We're really in a very tough economy. So my advice is always to, especially if they're like just starting out, go and work in the industry that you want to become an entrepreneur. If it's like, it doesn't have to be like anything major, like you don't have to disrupt a whole system, but go and get the experience, understand the gaps that exist within that industry, and go and solve that problem. Like fall in love with the problem. The solution can change over time, and that's okay. But really though, if you have a really great problem that you're passionate about to solve, maybe passionate is a strong word, but like you're just like interested in wanting to solve, really understand the industry, like go in and do the work and understand the industry. And then from there, go into entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship it's amazing. It sounds fun, but it honestly, like it gets so romanticized and it's hard work, right? Like talk to any entrepreneur. Like it's not easy work. And if you're building it from scratch, you need to almost like work backwards. So it's like have a vision of where you want to be in the next, maybe it's like 2 or 5 years or whatever it may be. But it's like, what do you need to do today in order to get there is kind of how you should approach it.
Amazing. That was amazing advice. Thank you so much for the conversation today. This has been an absolute privilege. And
Thank you.
Fantastic job on the panel today, too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me here as well. This is wonderful.
Of course. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
For our next conversation today, we are joined by Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn, you probably do a much better job of introducing yourself than I do. So tell our listeners a little bit of who you are and the work that you do every day.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Nice to be here. As you said, my name's Kaitlyn. I'm a manager in the AI and data practice at Ernst & Young. I'll call it EY for short. My day-to-day life, there's honestly not 2 days that look the same. It's very unpredictable. And so within the scope of AI and data, I focus on kind of the people and adoption side. So I focus on ensuring that we're implementing AI in a responsible and safe way, that is the right choice for the tool that we should be implementing as well, and that people are able to actually use it at the organization.
I love it, and I feel like that's one of the most underrated things. Everyone focuses on the tech. Not the people that use it.
It is, exactly. And it's an interesting intersection because typically like organizational change management and those areas would focus on that type of work. And it's really cool to see it within the AI and data practice itself, is having those people. I consider myself kind of a translator and being able to observe kind of different areas and be able to connect those dots between the people and the technology.
So I feel like we could have a whole conversation on that topic alone.
Yeah.
But for the purposes of today, how did you get into that space? Like it's a very niche world you're in.
It is, and honestly, I'm like the worst example, or maybe the best, of having a complete non-planned career. I started in fashion, ended up doing anthropology in Greenland, doing a master's and PhD, ended up in change management, and then 18 months ago found myself with one coffee chat turning into a whole new career. So for me, it was just a testament to saying yes to opportunity in front of you, and yeah, it was never in the plan. Literally my life is a testament to just saying yes.
That's not the path the guidance counselor said. Take these 14 steps.
No.
Be an AI specialist.
It wasn't that, and there was no job posting that was like, hey, you're an anthropologist that has an interest in fashion. Would you be interested in working in AI and data? That was never a job posting either.
So in the world you're in, like obviously, so I work in tech as well, and so I know that there's a lot of opportunity still. In terms of the equality side of things, in terms of the different opportunities, what trends are you seeing from a women perspective in what's happening in the tech ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and something I think about all the time, because often I am the only female in the rooms that I exist in. And I think there is real progress being made. I don't want to come and be pessimistic. There is real progress. I think women are participating and leading AI and data programs across organizations, across industries, and not just being kind of in the background. We are seeing real leadership with women. We're also, I think, another interesting kind of thing to lean into is we're seeing a lot of people taking kind of priority with responsible AI, and women tend to be more in that space, promoting the responsible use of AI, but also ensuring that we're talking about bias that can be inherent in AI, especially women of color. They're really at the forefront of that. But I don't want to sugarcoat it. There's still a lot of space and growth to be had there. We're not at an equitable kind of framework yet, but I do see progress. We just need more people saying yes to women in the space and giving us chances.
I love it. If you were to, give advice to someone that's at the front end of their career, maybe they've, been in fashion, then anthropology, or maybe some combination of the two.
Yeah.
And they're looking at entering the tech space specifically. What advice would you give to a young woman in that scenario?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give, and it's something I continually tell myself, is you don't have to fit into a box. We spend our whole entire lives trying to act a certain way, be a certain way, act professional, especially women. I think we're definitely bombarded with those messages continuously. And I think every detour, every time you change your career, that's just knowledge you're gaining. That's information points, data points, if you will. And that's your superpower. That allows you to exist in a complex world. And honestly, with the way AI is trending, with the way that technology is expanding at unprecedented rates, we need women that are able, we need people, women especially, that don't fit inside a box, that give themselves permission. So what I said earlier is just burn the box. Burn it down.
Yeah.
Don't ask for permission. Just do it.
Yeah, I think there's a whole other conversation we can and maybe should have around the curiosity and just the ability to dive between topics. But, for today, I heard your panel today was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank
it's
you.
been a privilege to have this chat.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Yeah, thanks. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. For our next conversation, we have Amanda Klym.
Hello.
Hi. I'm Amanda. I'm super excited for this conversation. But instead of me introducing you, I'd love if you introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are, the work that you do, and kind of what gets you excited every day.
Yeah, I would love to. So my name is Amanda Klym.
Yeah.
I lead people operations for Ambient, which if you're not familiar with, it is a Calgary-based AI SaaS startup that really focuses on serving the energy industry. Our platform essentially helps oil and gas producers be able to optimize their production, make better decisions, remove some of that manual work. In the people operations space that I've kind of operated for the past 7 years, I think the biggest thing that fills my cup, if you will, is just the opportunity to create those really amazing experiences for the people that I get to work with, making sure from, that day one moment to the time that they eventually exit, it's just a positive moment in their life as they reflect on their careers.
Yeah. One, I think even, with Ambient and the reputation you have in the city as well, it sounds like a really special place to be as you're going through this growth phases right now.
Yes.
How did you find yourself starting to do this work?
Yeah, so I started in more operational roles, and I was an operations manager at the innovation arm of ATB Financial called ATB Ventures. And so I was working across kind of both business operations and people operations. And I had a really great leader at the time that, as the role kind of grew too big for one person, really asked me and coached me to understand kind of what path I wanted to take. And, through all of those conversations and reflection, it was just really the people stuff that lit me up, and knowing that I could make a really great impact in people's work experiences.
I love it. And so I also love that framing, not necessarily HR, but more so that kind of people and culture side of things. In the work that you do, you probably have a really interesting glimpse into the world that you can control within Ambient. But in the industry at large, are there trends that you're seeing, especially when it comes to kind of female representation or women representation or the opportunities that are being created there? Are there trends you're seeing across the kind of tech and oil and gas industry that are good, bad, headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I think so. I'm less familiar with the oil and gas industry through and through. Tech is definitely my background. I think what I'm starting to see, or
what is becoming a lot more common is, gender parity at leadership tables, or just having that representation. And, I have been very fortunate to have been led throughout my career by some very, powerful and high caliber female leaders. And for me, that representation was so important because it just really showed you, I can do that too, and it's possible. And so getting to see it more frequently show up across the tech industry has been something that's been really encouraging.
And is that happening kind of more in Calgary specifically, or are you seeing that across the board where we're headed in the right direction?
I think across the board. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of other things and challenges that we have to overcome, for sure. I don't think it's all sunshine and rainbows, but, there's a lot of organizations that are, focused on having that diversity across the board, or just open to, different perspectives and ways of thinking, which I think is incredibly important.
And at Ambient specifically, like, what have you been able to shape to kind of create that culture that you're looking to build?
Yeah, so I think for me and Ambient more specifically, in shaping the culture, I always talk about people first culture, and it's really just understanding the human behind it. And so making sure that different individuals feel supported in the ways that they need to feel supported, or that there's flexibility in the way that they need flexibility. I don't believe in, a one size fits all, and I think that that's important as well, from, bringing women into organizations and making sure that they have the flexibility if they, have children or need to go and do all of these different things, not having that parenting tax kind of put on them. So
that makes a lot of sense and sounds incredible. If you think about the year in front of us, if you think about the opportunities that are out there, if you're giving advice to someone that's maybe on the front end of their career, or they're looking to build something incredible and follow their dreams and their passion and their heart, what words of wisdom do you have for someone in that spot?
Yeah, so even to this day, I ask myself a question all of the time, which is, why not me? And I think more so from a women's point of view, but I think oftentimes women, as an example, tend to, wait until they check all of the boxes, or maybe don't feel like they belong in the room, or, just don't feel like they deserve the opportunities ahead of them. And so for those that are starting their career, that are uncertain if they should be putting their hand up or if they should be asking for these opportunities, I would encourage them to just ask themselves, like, why not me? We all deserve that.
I love it. I feel like that's a fantastic piece of advice, and thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For the words of wisdom, and fantastic job on the panel earlier today as well.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Of course. On our next interview, we're joined by Qimat. Qimat, I'd love you to just introduce yourself and a little bit about the work that you do and the company that you represent.
For sure. My name is Qimat Zafar. I am a barrister and solicitor with the Virtual Law Group Canada. We're a small boutique. We're a full-service law firm in the northeast of the city. We do various areas of law. So we do immigration law, we do real estate, we do personal injury, civil litigation, real estate. That's not an exhaustive list. So we are a women-only law firm. Our lawyers, we have 4 lawyers, all women. Our principal lawyer, Parminder Kaur, opened the firm a couple of years ago, and she's doing great. So that's who I am. Brief introduction.
Amazing. And so did you always imagine you were going to be a lawyer? Or?
Yes, actually, from a very young age. Culturally, my father wanted me to do something big.
Right.
You're either going to be a doctor or you're going to be a lawyer.
Okay.
I didn't like blood. I didn't like numbers. So I thought, okay, the only other path is to be a lawyer. So I went into that right away.
It was written in stone.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So I'm happy with it. I'm very pleased with it. It's not something I'm going to be wanting to change anytime soon. So I'm pleased where I'm at.
Amazing. And so, you probably have a really interesting lens into the legal landscape, especially when it comes to some of the diversity and opportunities for women in there. And it sounds like you have a women-only firm that you've built and created. But at a larger scale, what trends are you seeing when it comes to a representation of women across the legal field?
We've got a lot of work to do in that field for sure. There's a lot of male-run firms where partnership is only male. I'm seeing more and more women lead the role, more and more women in partnership. But again, there's more work around that area. For example, retention of female lawyers at 5 years, that's kind of where you're at. And then after 5 years, they say, okay, well, I want to go somewhere else. Like, I'm not getting what I can here, especially if you're working for male lawyers. So that's one thing. And also maybe I'm also thinking it'd be good to have like a better pavement of a role into how women can get into partnership roles. So those are places where we need more work.
That makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
so without surmising too much, like what are some of those opportunities? Is it like what you've created with your organization, or is it just more in other traditional organizations, creating some of those pathways to partnership and creating some of those more role models?
Yeah, I think for me specifically, I come from a background where I worked for a male-dominated law firm where the partners were male, which is great. I learned so much there. They're great lawyers. But after I left that firm and I'm now working at a firm where it's just women, is completely different. There's a lot more empathy when it comes to working with just women. So I think that's the best way. I thought it was going to be very difficult kind of to move from that shift to here. But as soon as I made that decision, I was like, this is probably the best decision for me career-wise.
I love it. And so if you were to, give advice to someone, maybe they're on the front end of that journey.
Yes.
Maybe they're starting, at the end of their schooling, or they're starting to kind of adventure into the world of law. What advice do you have for someone that's really looking to build that next step, that career for themselves, with the lessons that you've learned along the way?
I would say my advice to women in this field is very simple. It's that to stop asking permission to take up space. Obviously, these industries that we're coming into, they weren't built with us in mind, us as females, but they're definitely being reshaped by our presence, by our leadership, by our competence. And I also say, just don't wait for the perfect time, the perfect mentor, the perfect level of confidence. Just move on, speak anyway, apply anyway, negotiate anyway. Yeah. Right? You know your self-worth, you know your self-value. It's a hard step to take, but once you take it, it's the best step you've ever taken in your career.
Amazing. I really, really appreciate you sharing all this today with myself and also our listeners.
Yes, thank you for having me.
This has been an absolute privilege, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
For our next discussion, I'm super excited to have a chat with Ashley from Bloom Benefits Group. Ashley, I'm just going to jump right into things. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do with Bloom?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Keith. I'm Ashley Forbes, and I am a benefits advisor with Bloom Benefits Group. We are a boutique firm located here out of Calgary, but we have clients all across Canada.
Amazing. And so how did you get into the benefits advisory space?
It's not something that I woke up one day and was like, I'm getting into benefits and insurance, even though I love The Incredibles. But really, I really enjoy working with people, getting to meet new people and, learning more about their histories, what their values, what their goals are, and just seeing if there's any way that we can get in. And that's kind of my role with Bloom Benefits.
I love it. Yeah, and both my wife and sister work in insurance, so I feel like I know the space is enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, there's a little bit. Insurance is never fun. It's not a sexy industry,
yeah.
But being an advisor, at least I get to connect with the people more on that side.
Fantastic. And so what does kind of the day-to-day look like for you then? Is it, I guess I'll let you answer.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Basically, my role is to work with employers and help them to design and manage employee benefits. So a lot of the companies that we work with, they do not have large-scale HR teams, nor do they have the expertise or the time. They're small businesses and they're growing, and we take that off of their plate. We don't also just, the minute they sign, leave. We offer, and we are in there engaging, helping with plan education sessions and going from the day-to-day.
So you probably have a super interesting perspective in seeing both the kind of benefits from a company perspective, but also across the landscape of the benefits and insurance ecosystem. What progress have you seen happen, especially when it comes to women and representation across that space over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a positive change, especially, as we're here celebrating International Women's Day and really helping to hype up the women in our industry. Historically, the insurance and benefit world has been pretty male dominant, but we're seeing on the executive side and even in the brokerages, that we're seeing more women stepping into advisory roles, leadership roles, and executive roles. So it's really nice to be able to champion and build the ground up with them and making sure that, we're opening that door for the next generation.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And so if you were giving advice to someone that was stepping into the insurance industry or stepping into the benefit side of things, they're ambitious, they're excited to get going. What words of wisdom would you have for them as they're embarking on their career and building out their future?
Yeah, no, I think there's a few moving key parts to that. I think one thing would be to encourage women to not underestimate their value and their perception. I think that sometimes we can end up in a room where we feel like we don't belong, but to really harness in and say, no, you know what, I do belong in this room and I'm going to fight to be here. A lot of careers, especially in professional services, with what I deal with, and advising people through important decisions is making sure you have that trusted partnership of the person you're working with, and acting as a partner and not just as a salesperson.
I love it. So thank you so much for the conversation today and the answers you provided. It's been really enlightening. Appreciate the time, and also I hope you enjoy the rest of the event today too.
Thank you so much, Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For our next discussion, I'm incredibly privileged to have Parminder with us. Parminder, you probably introduce yourself slightly better than I will, so I'm just going to hand it right over to you. I would love to learn a little bit about you and the work that you do with Ballard Group.
Absolutely. I'm Parminder, as Keith mentioned, and I work for Ballard Group as a business development representative for our Agri-Edge program. And my role kind of is to connect the employers with the candidates that we have in our program, the participants. So we kind of see the gaps in the employment, and wherever there are gaps in the industry, we try to fill those gaps through our workforce development programs. And then I'm kind of that link between the employers and the participants. So that's kind of my role. And for Ballard, we are a purpose-driven company. We have training centers across Alberta, and we help underemployed and unemployed people or individuals who are looking for jobs. We train them for industries like supply chain and logistics, constructions, hospitality, insurance, and agriculture as well. So we just see the gaps. Wherever the gaps are, we try to develop training programs that could fill those gaps and help the employers.
I love it. And so I have infinity questions, but to start off with, how did you get connected with Ballard, and what parts of your career brought you to where you are today?
So I've been doing business development for almost 12 years, and it started with Bell, like a telecommunication company. I started with on the retail side as a sales representative. Never knew. It was kind of my first job ever in Canada once I moved, and then I had no idea where I was going from there. And I think they saw the potential in me, and then they moved me to the business development side on the medium business. That's kind of how I started. But most of my career, I have been working with organization on the tech side, health tech, and then I worked with a nonprofit in health as well. So that's kind of what I did for sales. When I started with Ballard Group, I did not know what I was signing up for. I think when I went for the interview and the questions, and when I researched about the organization, I kind of had no idea that organizations like this exist. I have been in Canada for 12 years, started my career. At that point, if I would have known that there are organizations that can help, I would have taken the help, right? But I had no idea. And when I went for that interview, I went back home. I was working remote from almost 5 years. And I told my husband, I just love the company and what they're doing. And I think this role is exactly what I was looking for so many years, but never really knew that this exists. And the only part was that it was in-person role. I was working remote for the past 5 years, before this job. So I was I love meeting people in person. But then I have 2 kids. So I was I don't know if I'll be able to manage that. So I guess it's my husband who kind of motivated me. He was you need to go for what you want to do, right? If this is really something that you're passionate about and you think you'll excel at, you should go for it. And I did that, and I just love this. I love every component of what I'm doing. I love working with those participants who are newcomers to Canada, and they are exactly where I was 12 years ago, so I could really relate to their experience. They have the greatest education that they can have, right? And then they have all the skills needed. And what Ballard does is Ballard helps them to upskill and enter the Canadian workforce. So I just love that.
I love it. And your passion is shining through here. you probably have such an interesting lens on what's happening in the workforce, not just from the populations that you serve, but really across also where those gaps are in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about some of the progress that's been made and where some of the opportunities still are, specifically when it comes to women across those spaces, what are some of those trends that you see?
So I think as I said, these programs kind of work on the gaps, right? Like we have to see the gaps before we can actually start these programs. And for women in the industry, like we see that there's a clear gap for women in construction industry, right? We don't see women in the construction industry as much as we want to, right? So that's kind of the reason that we have this construction program, and a lot of the participants that we have in that program are women. They want to enter the construction industry, and same with the agriculture industry as well. Like a lot of times when we hear that there's an agriculture program, like people call me and they're like, "Oh, is it to work at a farm?" And I'm like, "No," right? Like if you read it, it's like more a business and a financial management program in agriculture, which would help women enter the agriculture industry, right? Because not like agriculture industry need different skills. They need skills for administration, accounting, business, sales, right? A lot of these skills are even tech. Like when I went to my first conference for agriculture, like almost a year ago from today, I was like, is this an agriculture conference or a tech conference? Because there is more tech than I think anyone knows in the agriculture industry that's already there, but at the same time that's needed. So we need to kind of channel women to the industries that need them, and that's kind of what we do.
I love it. I feel like we could unpack that whole conversation for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should at some point. If we think about the year ahead, and we think about some of the opportunities that are out there, and also maybe the advice that you might have to give to someone that's at the front end of that journey, someone that's excited, they're inspired, but maybe they need some words of wisdom as they're launching or building their career. What words would you have for that person?
I think one thing that I have been saying to everyone, and I'll say to anyone who kind of wants to launch their career, is networking. It's really important. It has always been important. Now it's kind of more, I would say, like we're scheduling networking. Before, like we would more intentionally do it. So intentional networking is something that's really important. Build those relationships, because you don't know. The relationships that I built when I used to work with Bell, like 10 years ago, they're still with me, and like they help me a lot. So those relationships are the key to your success, like anywhere. And then the other thing that I kind of want to say is that you kind of have to see the opportunities that exist and take them. A lot of times with our educational backgrounds, when we come to a new country, and like even women that are here once they finish their education, a lot of times we just see a straight path. But I don't think anyone's career has a straight path, right? Maybe some people, but not for a lot of us. So we have to take the opportunities that exist and then make benefit of it, and you don't know where you will land, right? And just one more thing. I think a lot of times as women, we just underrate our perspective, but don't do that. Your perspective is super important. You need to bring that perspective up in the organizations you work, in the meetings that you sit in, because like those perspectives are actually going to bring the innovation. We talk about innovation every single day, but what is innovation? It's actually someone's perspective that had some, that was productive. So I guess like bringing those perspectives out, talking about what you think is really, really important, and people would listen to it.
Amazing. That was incredible advice, Parminder, and thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation was fantastic, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event as well.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
I'm very excited to have another conversation here, this time with Kimberley from Eco Canada.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. Kimberley, we're going to jump right into things. I'd love to learn a little bit about you and your organization, Eco Canada.
Great. Well, Kimberley Burfoot, I'm Eco Canada's Vice President of Finance and Operations. So I work heavily in our finance team, HR, technology. Those are my areas. So, of course, we also are trying to bring along our industry in a lot of these kinds of technologies. So, we're trying to be a leader in the space, which is very difficult to do when the landscape changes every day. We're trying to have a leadership position in showing our industry how they can use AI to have better information. it will never replace the people, but it will make people's work in the sector much more efficient and help with a lot of the economic challenges that businesses are having, especially if they're tariff affected or, just in general. It's very tough for people out there to start new businesses, and it's a very difficult economic environment. So whatever we can do to help.
Well, and I feel like the bingo card is starting to get a little bit full in terms of things that are happening that are external, that fall in the external force category.
Yes, but what it's teaching us is that we can only depend on ourselves, and we need to build the skills here, the systems here, and the industry here to be self-sufficient and not as reliant on things we can't control. So,
And I guess that's a good segue into the work that Eco Canada does. So, like, if you were to describe in a couple sentences the work that you do every day, what does that look like?
Essentially, we remove the barriers that employers have in finding qualified staff, and that prospective employees, whether they're just new graduates, or even just going into school, or whether they're, needing to find a new home, a new career, because the one they had is no longer working for them. Maybe it's become, technology has made it obsolete. Maybe, it could be anything that people are looking, to get somewhere new and settled. So that's really where we work in that space. We try to remove the barriers that employers, people, and academia has to making people have a successful start-to-end career in environmental work, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds.
I imagine that is quite a difficult challenge. So from the work that you're doing, then you probably have quite an interesting vantage point into some of the forces, not just in the environmental side of things, but also in terms of the labor market, in terms of some of the technology trends you're talking about.
Yes.
If we were to really kind of laser focus into some of the progress as well as some of the opportunities that exist, for women in those spaces, are there any key observations that you have?
Well, I'm actually proud to say that this industry has done an excellent job with parity. We have 41% of the industry is female, and not a lot of industries can say that. I think there's a few different factors. So I've had basically 3 phases to my career so far. The first one was in manufacturing, which only had women in administrative and finance roles, generally. Next was in safety in the trucking industry. 3% of truck drivers are female. It's not a comfortable or even a safe occupation for females. Females don't sleep on the side of a road. It's not a comfortable place to be. To now going into, still in not-for-profit, but into the environmental sector. And one of the reasons I think that we've done so well with that particular statistic is because of the way that our federal funding programs are designed. So we are heavily dependent on the federal government for funding for these initiatives. They have workforce development goals as well, and so we work together as their delivery partner of these projects. And they are very specific about the demographics that we need to meet in these programs to ensure that everybody has access to this, to ensure that everyone can come into a program that helps them break down the barriers that they have to good employment. And so I really think that just those systemic choices have made a huge difference in the diversity, not just in women, but all the different kinds of diversity that's in our beautiful culture. And I think it's had a really great impact.
That's phenomenal. So you're not just an observer on the sidelines, you're actively participating and kind of driving some of the change you want to see.
Oh, yeah, at every level. We have all kinds of programs and supports for whatever challenges that businesses or people would have in having a great and lucrative career.
Incredible. So if you were to, think about and envision maybe someone that's on, maybe someone that's looking at entering some of your programs, maybe someone that's kind of looking at building or changing their career, what words of advice would you have?
Oh, I would say definitely reach out for help. There's a lot of programs out there, a lot of government-funded and non-government funded programs out there. So, search, whether that's online or through your network, but get out there also to, we're today at a wonderful women's conference with a bunch of very intelligent tech people. This city, Calgary, that we're in right now, specifically, you don't get a good job based on your resume or your interview. It's based on your network. So you have to build that network, and then you have to take all the support that you can find and get. And I think women especially, we have to just be a little more confident in what we have to offer. One of the stats I really like that we did going through all of our applicants over the years is that women will apply for a job if they meet 90% of the requirements on a job posting. Men on average are 60%. They look at a job posting and they say, well, I could do that. And it's not a trait that women share in most cases. So I would say try anyway and sell your transferable skills.
I love it. I feel like that's phenomenal advice. Thank you so much. As I promised, kind of short and sweet for the conversation, but I really appreciate you taking the time to
very happy to be here
to chat today. And thank you so much for the time and the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. For our second to last interview of the day, I am incredibly excited to have Jennifer from Magna Engineering. I just wanted to dive into things here. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about the organization you've built.
I started it as, I think the most important story is as a single mom. So when people ask me about the entrepreneur journey, I think all of us started out of some type of necessity. So mine was single mom, pregnant, 2-year-old, had this engineering degree behind me, big network of people. And I thought, okay, well, I need something that's going to help me be around with the kids. It needs to pay the bills. Why didn't I try this out? What happened, interestingly, is I created this hybrid work environment that could support my life. And there was all these people that wanted to work in a company like that. And I built it with purpose around nature-based solutions for water. Turns out there's a lot of people that would really like to make that their purpose. So I'm not going to say it was easy, but I was able to attract some really incredible people. And so then, you get big enough, you get to be a CEO of this thing you created. So it's been really fun.
That's amazing. So how long ago did you start that journey?
I am in year 10 right now. So 2016, I started it off, and next November, we're going to celebrate 10 years.
That's incredible. Well, yeah. I'll say congratulations, and that's a huge milestone. So there's, ups, downs, sideways, everything along that entrepreneurial journey. If you think back to when you launched it, did you envision that you would be in the spot you're in now, or was it more so, I'm gonna, I'll take the first step and see where the world takes me?
Door number 2, and I'll say it from, I have had a couple kind of just, like we all have, big twists and turns in our stories. And in my late 20s, early 30s, I had decided to take life in 5-year chunks. So I know we talk about goals and what we're going to get to. And for me, it was space. So I was going to give myself 5 years to build some type of company that could pay the bills. My youngest, when I really was going, I had done a little bit on the side, but when it really got launched, my youngest was starting to get into school. And so I'd give myself 5 years of space to see what would happen. And I didn't invest a lot into it. I started it on $1. So, it was going to be risk reward that way. And in those first 5 years, I learned that the industry was desperately looking what we were going to offer. And it was like, okay, well, then let's just do this. And that's when I really started to bring on a lot of key staff and decided about that time I was going to be the CEO and actually do some really good strategic planning that would get us to where we are today. So it didn't start out that way, but I started to see where it could go. And then that's when it really hit that gear.
And so it was the time to kind of jump in with both feet.
Yes.
And kind of pot committed, as they say.
Exactly.
And so, you probably have, a couple of different interesting perspectives, from the entrepreneurial side, but also in the engineering space. From a female perspective, what's some of the progress that's been made in the last decade?
I think the biggest part is I'm seeing more women. And I even think we talk about in the engineering classes, we're actually seeing, surprisingly, in some engineering fields, more women in the engineering classes level, like in taking the degree, than men. So it's been really interesting. In the field, especially in the leadership side, still like probably more 10 to 1. There's only a few of us, but there's more and more. So I think that the movement is that female leadership is starting to be a bit more respected. One of the things in engineering that's tough is we have to be assertive. We have to have a certain level of intelligence and confidence because you're trusting me with your life. We used to always talk that doctors kill one person at a time. If I screw up a building, I can kill thousands at a time. So it's pretty important what we're doing. But I think there's some real space there for that creativity, that relationship-driven leadership that women really bring to the table. And we're seeing more and more of it because there's more of us around the table. So I think that's the big move. I don't think that the specific leadership has changed. It's not like, oh, this is what leadership looks like now. But now that you've got more of us at the table, it's possible that in the next 10 years, when you ask me that same question, I'll be like, yeah, we're all doing it now. Doesn't matter, male or female.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I will just make a quick joke about the, in university, they are still boys, I think.
Yes. Thank you, because it almost came out.
I think you can safely say there's still boys in university. I feel like you probably have a lot of wisdom from the journey that you've been on to impart to someone that's at the front end of it. They're starting out, taking those chances. If you were to, think of a couple of key points that you would love to impart to someone that was in that same scenario that you were 10 years ago, well, what would those be?
I could think I have two really good ones that I would leave with. One of them is, it was my own mistake, so that's why this is a good learning. There's a big difference between independence and interdependence. Independence is it's close to perfectionism. It's, I can do this on my own. This is how this is going to go. I actually started dealing with panic attacks in 2020, and it was a real lesson to me that I needed to get back to interdependence, which is about asking for help, offering help, building a circle of people around you that respect all aspects of your life. And I think that probably all of us, but especially women, we tend to take it all on. And it's really hard for us to understand where imposter syndrome and things like that come into it. And when you're in a true interdependent relationship, when people care about you as much as they care about the things that you're accomplishing, you really have that ability to be real. That those times when you just I just can't do it, I need help, are not as scary. And it also means that we can be courageous and we can take brave steps before we're ready because we've got these people that we can fall back on when we need it. So I think that really understanding the difference between independence and interdependence. And the second one is be unapologetic. I had mentioned earlier today to someone that I have tried to take I'm sorry out of my emails, out of my language, the word I was just doing this, like this type of rhetoric. Just take it out of all of the way that we communicate. We're already kind of facing, am I just by walking into a room, am I intelligent enough? Can I do this? All this imposter syndrome. If we can just get rid of a couple of those words that are a bit self-deprecating before we've even shared how we feel about something, it doesn't only just build confidence with the person you're talking to, but even yourself. You're unapologetically making these choices. So I think those are the two things that I would leave with.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing those perspectives today. Thank you for taking the time for the conversation. I'm honored that it took a couple of minutes to sit down. Fantastic job on the panel today, and I really enjoyed having you on this mini version of the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for the ask.
Awesome. So for our final conversation of today, I'm quite excited to be wrapping up with you today, Dee. Dee, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
I'm the founder of Dots and Lines. We're a curated marketplace for art workshops, connecting communities and companies with professional artists through creative experiences and art workshops. We're on a mission to revolutionize how people engage with art through a creative sharing economy, empowering artists and creators to thrive in their craft while empowering a vibrant community where the wider population can actively engage with art, share their experiences, and form meaningful connections.
That's amazing. So how did you get into that?
My family and I moved here from Denmark.
Yeah.
about 3.5 years ago, I brought Dots and Lines idea with me here, and I found Calgary is a wonderful city to launch and grow in my company.
I love it, and I agree with you. We're building a company here as well, and it's a great ecosystem to build in. When you think about kind of what Dots and Lines represents, what does that kind of practically look like in terms of some of those connections, in terms of the ecosystem, and what you're delivering through the organization?
We work closely with talented artists here locally and curate workshops, host them together, welcoming individuals and families and corporate teams to step away from their routine, connect with one another, and share the joy of experiences. And as we grow, we always welcome collaboration with diverse artists and local venues and other creative communities to join us in creating experiences that further enrich our city's social and cultural aspects.
I love it. And so, you're in a really interesting spot where it sounds like you're at the intersection of the culture and arts, the intersection of more traditional business ecosystems, and then really building that strong community. When you think about the progress that's been made, specifically when it comes to women and the involvement in those communities and ecosystems, over the last few years, what observations do you have?
I'm seeing there are lots of opportunities for women leaders in Calgary. The city's focus on diversifying economy and supporting entrepreneurship is creating real momentum for women to step into leadership roles. I've personally joined in programs designed to help women gain the skills and the resources to succeed, and that has been really helpful and encouraging for me.
I love it. And so if you think about even some of the learnings from those programs or your career beforehand, if you were to be giving advice to someone that was at maybe the front end of their journey, or they're looking to build or do something really exciting and that they're passionate about, what advice would you have for them?
Trust yourself to start with or continue to build what you are truly passionate about, and take the steps to pursue it. Calgary offers strong support for women across industries. When I launched Dots and Lines, the connection and the guidance I found through Platform Calgary made a real difference, and I encourage other women to engage with communities like this. Surround yourself with people who understand your journey, support your growth, and most importantly, trust your own path. Focus on growth and enjoying the journey of building something meaningful that speaks to your heart.
I love it. I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up our series of conversations today, Dee. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm humbled by the conversation, and thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this special episode of Sell Me This Podcast. It was both a pleasure and an honor to have some of these amazing conversations. And just as a quick reminder, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode. Many more to come.